Tánaiste, when people come to live, work or socialise in Dublin, they want to live the experience of a modern, vibrant city, which includes our many great historic cultural buildings as well as our sporting amenities. And we all welcome that and we all want to keep it that way. But unfortunately, Tánaiste, there's a dark side to our capital which we witnessed in the last week. For example, with the death of Jonathan Corrie in the shadow of the front gate of this building. We also saw in the last number of days, detailed on the front of the Irish Daily Mail, a number of people engaged in drug taking at the rear of the Leinster House complex, again in broad daylight, which was truly shocking. Now, Tánaiste, yesterday at the Oireachtas Justice Committee, we had the Dublin Business Association, which associations which represent vintners, restaurants, hotels, the Temple Bar area and many of the businesses which operate in the Dublin city centre. And they told a tale of crime in Dublin city centre, Tánaiste, which is quite shocking. They tell us about shoplifting, drug taking, handbag snatching, aggressive begging, all which is quite shocking, including mobile phone theft. And unfortunately, Tánaiste, we have been raising this for the last number of weeks and months with you, and you're in denial. They point out, the Dublin Business Associations, that Gardaí have fallen in Dublin city centre by about 12%, that in 7 of the 8 Garda stations in Dublin city centre, both north side and south side, are down approximately 160 Gardaí. They also point out, Tánaiste, that the operation of the Garda roster is hampering the operation of their businesses and hampering how the public go about living and working in Dublin city centre. And to back up all of this, Tánaiste, they've conducted an independent survey which details that 87% of people believe there should be a greater Garda presence in Dublin city centre. Now, Tánaiste, a number of weeks ago, my colleague here beside me, Deputy Barry Cowan, raised this issue with you. And I think it's fair to describe your response was one of disconnect and indeed of total denial. Now, ye are in charge here, Tánaiste. There is a problem in Dublin city centre in relation to the issues which I have outlined. We have been saying this, Tánaiste. I have been saying it. Yesterday at the Oireachtas Justice Committee, the Dublin Business Associations detailed it quite graphically. So what I want to ask you, Tánaiste, is this. Are you willing to agree to implement what the Dublin Business Associations are looking for, which is to boost Gardaí in Dublin city centre, and also to release a quantity of funds which would allow an Garda Síochána to operate in a meaningful fashion, for example by giving them an adequate overtime budget, and to deal with the concerns which are being raised by the legitimate representatives of the business associations, of people who live and work in Dublin city centre, so that they can engage in their normal day-to-day business lives and in their personal and in their social lives, unencumbered by the scourge of antisocial behaviour and crime in Dublin city centre. Thank you.
Tánaiste, please. Deputy. Tánaiste, sorry. Tánaiste to reply. Well, no, let's have order, please.
First of all, Deputy Collins raised the very sad death of Mr. Jonathan Corrie earlier this week. So I just want to say again, as I have said previously, that I want to extend my condolences to his family and his friends. He was clearly a person who was at the centre of a very loving family and a loving and supportive network of relations and friends, and I think we should offer our condolences to them as a Dáil. The second point that you made, Deputy Collins, is around drugs and drug taking. And without a doubt, anybody who has lived and spent time in Dublin city centre will know that over a long period of time, drugs has been a very significant problem, including people who are in rehabilitation to a degree and attending methadone centres. And in terms of Dublin, the Dublin Business Association, just let me say that I have met with people from that association in recent times, including I think it's Mr. Guiney, who's the manager and the person spearheading the efforts of the Dublin city centre retailers and the council to make Dublin city centre a more attractive place. I think the critical issue in relation to some of the aggressive begging and the shoplifting and so on, which was referenced in the committee yesterday, is in fact, much of it is related to people in the city centre who do have substance abuse problems. And I think the critical issue there for An Garda Síochána is the provision of adequate community policing resources. Now, you are aware that just in recent days, the government actually gave the go-ahead to a significant supplementary estimate for the Gardaí in relation to matters such as overtime and in relation to investment both this year and next year in additional resources in relation to IT and in relation to vehicles. Also, in respect of Garda resources, the first training of 100 Gardaí in Templemore commenced this year, and Budget 2015 provides for a further complement of Gardaí to be trained. And as the Dublin city centre stations, as I'm sure you know, count, and the suburban stations in Dublin come within the framework, many of the Gardaí who are trained will in fact be allocated both in the city centre and in the suburbs. I personally strongly favour a visible presence of Gardaí in a community-based policing force on the streets. And when I spoke previously on this, I actually said that that's one of the things that the Gardaí are doing in the city centre. They're actually calling to premises, and they're calling on a house-by-house basis to homes on both the north side and the south side of the inner city. And what I said the last day was that initiative by An Gardaí has been actually very, very well received. Now, I do think that as the independent Garda Authority gets underway, under the chairmanship of Ms Josephine Feely, who is retiring as chairperson of the Revenue Commissioners, I do think that there will be an opportunity to look at policing models for the maximum effect in terms of street crime and the kind of difficulties that you describe.
Thank you,
on the streets of Dublin. I do think that that should be a priority for the new independent policing authority.
Deputy Niall Collins, supplementary question.
Thanks, Lester. Minister, you referenced the supplementary estimate to the Department of Justice, and that just shows how little a handle you have in relation to the issue of crime in Dublin, because that supplementary estimate went towards plugging the deficit in this year's payroll costs to An Garda Síochána. An Garda Síochána are trying to do the job in Dublin city centre with one arm tied behind their back because of the lack of resourcing. Now, Tánaiste, you said to me there in your initial response that you met with Mr Richard Guiney, the Chief Executive Officer of Dublin Town, but you didn't tell us what you intend to do to address his concerns, because they have outlined a number of specifics which they have asked to be addressed. And unfortunately, with the lack of that detail, the people out there who are concerned, including the public who live in Dublin city centre, are far less than reassured from your comments here today that you are listening with real concern to the issues which are being raised. So can you tell us, Tánaiste, what is your response as Deputy Leader of the Government, to the concerns which have been raised? And do you feel that Dublin City Centre is being adequately resourced and policed in terms of the resources available to An Garda Síochána to deal with the issues? Because, as I said in my introduction, when people come to Dublin either to live, to work or to socialise or tourists, they want to live a positive experience, and that's what we want. We all want that, but unfortunately, Tánaiste, there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect, and when you go beneath it, there are problems. You see it in the city centre, you see it in Temple Bar, you see it along O'Connell Street, you see it along the Liffey Boardwalk, and it is not being addressed, Tánaiste. And I don't get a sense, unfortunately, from you that there is a sense or a degree of urgency coming from your utterances here today that the issue will be dealt with adequately. So I'm asking you, can you tell us what undertakings you gave, if any, to Mr Guiney and to his colleagues in the various associations, and how you intend to deal with the problem?
Tánaiste to reply.
Well, I'm not sure how familiar you are actually with the way you're talking at the moment, because you're obviously not familiar with the public order units in both Store Street and on the north side and on the south side of the city centre, nor are you familiar with the fact that public order offences are now down by 7% in the south central area, and that's around the Pearse Street area, and about 19% in the Store Street area. And I want to say to you again, because I know when I spoke about this before, I know when I spoke,
Sorry,
I know.
Excuse me. This leader is the Tánaiste is applying. No, you're not. Sorry. Deputy, please. No, this leader's questions now, please.
Listen,
leader's questions.
You're not Mary Lou, and you should withdraw.
Please, sorry, no,
now you're not Mary Lou.
Please resume your seat, Deputy McGrath. Deputy McGrath. And we are below the Deputy, I'm on my feet. And that's another Deputy.
And for the first time in a long time, for the first time in a long time, there are actually now 100 guards in training. They're finishing their training, and there's another 100 next year. That's the reopening of the Garda College in Templemore. In addition, Deputy Collins seems to be unaware. Of the initiative that the Gardaí have taken.
Deputy Collins, please. No, Deputy, please. Deputy Collins. Please, Deputy.
Can I just say, you seem to be unaware of the work that the Gardaí are doing in the city centre, going door to door to residents and businesses, north side and south side. And the only thing that will address the difficulties in relation to the city streets is having a visible Garda presence on the street. That presence I welcome, and the Garda Commissioner is focusing on Garda presence, feet on the street. That is the way to reassure people and provide a solid Garda presence. Getting extra numbers is a function of training extra Gardaí, and we are doing that. Unlike yourselves who closed down Templemore, you put the shutters on Templemore in terms of closure. You put the shutters, and not only that, but you cut Garda pay by about 17%. So you need to actually think again about what you're responsible for. And the way to address crime in Dublin City, as in Cork, as in Galway, as in Limerick, as in villages, is by having a visible Garda presence in the community. And that is what the Gardaí are doing in Dublin City Centre.